പ്ലസ് ടു CBSE റിസൾട്ട് പ്രഖ്യാപിച്ചപ്പോൾ ബ്രില്യൻറ്റിലെ നിരവധി വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്കാണ് ഫുൾ A1 കരസ്ഥമാക്കാൻ സാധിച്ചത്. പാർട്ട് 1ലും പാർട്ട് 2ലുമായി 100 കണക്കിന് വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളെയും നമ്മൾ ഇതിനോടകം തന്നെ പരിചയപ്പെട്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞു. ബ്രില്യൻറ്റിൽ നിന്നും കൃത്യമായി പറഞ്ഞാൽ 1200-ലധികം വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്കാണ് പ്ലസ് ടു CBSE ബോർഡ് എക്സാമിന് ഫുൾ A1 കരസ്ഥമാക്കാൻ സാധിച്ചത്. ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ പാർട്ട് 3 പ്ലസ് ടു CBSE ഫുൾ A1 കരസ്ഥമാക്കിയ ബ്രില്യൻറ്റിലെ ബാക്കി മിടുക്കരെയാണ്.
ഹാനിയ ഷിറിൻ NF 484 out of 500. Vismaya Ajit Kumar 484 out of 500. Safwa Sadiq 484 out of 500. Abila Susan Binny 484 out of 500. Gauri Shajib 484 out of 500. Ivon Pauli 484 out of 500. Bhavya Mary Sanoj 484 out of 500. Michael Boni 484 out of 500. Sneha Siju 484 out of 500. Rashna Khadija 484 out of 500. Agna Anil 484 out of 500. Alisa Matthew 484 out of 500. Bevan Anthony Benny 484 out of 500. Pranav Parameswaran 484 out of 500. Farsana Salim 484 out of 500. Arfas Ashraf 484 out of 500. Anik Mundambra 484 out of 500. Isabel Jindo 484 out of 500. Albert Layson T 484 out of 500. Catherine Anna James 484 out of 500. Isha KB 484 out of 500. Anna Bobby 484 out of 500. Aaron Kurivila 484 out of 500. Christo Monsi Tirivil 484 out of 500. Sumeda N 484 out of 500. Sajit Aaron 484 out of 500. Ananda Krishnan A 484 out of 500. Anida Soni 484 out of 500. Abhinand Shibu 484 out of 500. Gayatri DH 484 out of 500. Aparna M 484 out of 500. Muhammad Haneen 484 out of 500. Faiz Nafsal 484 out of 500. Ishiga R Dev 484 out of 500. Jolsna MS 484 out of 500. Nayana AR Nair 484 out of 500. Femi George 484 out of 500. R Chariprabha 484 out of 500. Asni 484 out of 500. Hadia Mariam 484 out of 500. Vaishnav Vinod 484 out of 500. Manasa Sidraj 484 out of 500. Sarah Ali Sanit 484 out of 500. Saman Erchampat 484 out of 500. Jasmine George 484 out of 500. Fatima Parvin 484 out of 500. Ann Lisa Ashok 484 out of 500. Kritika Pramod 484 out of 500. Nandita V Babu 484 out of 500. Steve Exon 484 out of 500. Dev S Krishna 484 out of 500. Riya Ranjit 484 out of 500. Jishnu S 484 out of 500. Erin Maria Sunny 484 out of 500. Sandra Shaji 484 out of 500. Mohammad Ryan 483 out of 500. Joel Varghese George 483 out of 500. Jacob Roy 484 out of 500. Edel Abdur Rahman 483 out of 500. Seda Faisa 483 out of 500. Ashwadi R Praveen 483 out of 500. Maria Martin 483 out of 500. Ray Angela Justin 483 out of 500. Richard Prince 483 out of 500. Anthony Paul 483 out of 500. Devika Denise 483 out of 500. Chidrapalli Hemant 483 out of 500. Aslam M Asim 483 out of 500. Anu Fijo 483 out of 500. Aisha Rena 483 out of 500. Fatima Fisa Kiti 483 out of 500. Pranav Sai K 483 out of 500. Aida Shamsu 483 out of 500. Shreya P Nair 483 out of 500. George M Eugene 483 out of 500. Lakshmi Sadish 483 out of 500. Krishesh Nambudri V 483 out of 500. Rahul Ridish 483 out of 500. Advait Saji 483 out of 500. Rose Mariam George 483 out of 500. Janil Prince 483 out of 500. Ganesh Nair 483 out of 500. Nida Rahman 483 out of 500. Anjali CK 483 out of 500. Ananya Thomas 483 out of 500. Gauri B Ram 483 out of 500. Yadu Krishna K 483 out of 500. Anugrah S 483 out of 500. Sri Gauri Divya Vinu, 483 out of 500. Ann Sarah Jubi, 483 out of 500. Giovanna Jiboy, 483 out of 500. Srijit BS, 483 out of 500. Sharon Ann Binoy, 483 out of 500. Swati Chandra S, 483 out of 500. Ritik Jairam, 483 out of 500. Pranav S. Baliga, 483 out of 500. Ivan Melvin, 483 out of 500. Lisa Ann, 483 out of 500. Aditya Anand MD, 483 out of 500. Devika Unnikrishnan, 483 out of 500. Nisana, 483 out of 500. Nesrin Nias, 483 out of 500. K. Hrinisri, 483 out of 500. Amisha Maria, 483 out of 500. Helen Manoj, 483 out of 500. Trisha Isaac, 483 out of 500. Meenakshi BJ, 483 out of 500. Devika V. Nair, 483 out of 500. Surya Siju, 483 out of 500. Jennifer Abraham, 483 out of 500. Fatima Sabir, 482 out of 500. Madhavan VA, 482 out of 500. Anega C, 482 out of 500. Ananya Jayesh, 482 out of 500. Nathan Thomas, 482 out of 500. Pravid Prince, 482 out of 500. Shreya Shenod, 482 out of 500. Jeffy James, 482 out of 500. Adigesh, 482 out of 500. Aaron Abraham Jimmy, 482 out of 500. Nancy Elena Joseph, 482 out of 500. Suhas Sainab Sirajuddin, 482 out of 500. Chaitan Suresh, 482 out of 500. Dev Narayanan U, 482 out of 500. Dheeraj Murali, 482 out of 500. M. Malavika, 482 out of 500. Mayuga AM, 482 out of 500. Advaitas, 482 out of 500. Alshia Lilian, 482 out of 500. Avani D. Anil, 482 out of 500. Irene Sabu, 482 out of 500. Abhinav Ajan, 482 out of 500. Arshida, 482 out of 500. Avantika Rajesh, 482 out of 500. Vishnu K, 482 out of 500. Bharit Shankar, VR, 482 out of 500. Nobin P. Biju, 482 out of 500. Meera Nair, 482 out of 500. Roshan Sanju, 482 out of 500. Harida Rani J, 482 out of 500. Fatima Tarifa PM, 482 out of 500. Tanmay Sresh, 482 out of 500. Jeshwin Raju, 482 out of 500. Lakshmi S, 482 out of 500. Midul S. Santosh, 482 out of 500. Agil John Charur, 482 out of 500. Basim Muhammad Salil, 482 out of 500. Anvida P, 482 out of 500. Bava, 482 out of 500. Sribat Karikantara, 482 out of 500. Sreya S, 482 out of 500. Daniel Isaac Joy, 482 out of 500. Siddharth A. Shenoy, 482 out of 500. Prarthana Preeta, 482 out of 500. Amani Sainab, 482 out of 500. Abhay Krishnan, 482 out of 500. Sean Arun, 482 out of 500. Adul Rajiv Menon, 482 out of 500. Faya Sanina, 482 out of 500. Kannanunni JM, 482 out of 500. Devagannan J. Ajayan, 482 out of 500. Kirtana KL, 482 out of 500. Alvin Biju, 482 out of 500. Diya Merin Binu, 482 out of 500. Krishna Kumar KA, 482 out of 500. Arshin Shalaj, 482 out of 500. Rishika Neetu, 482 out of 500. Alpha Sibi, 482 out of 500. Maria Alex, 481 out of 500. Adya Ann Jacob, 481 out of 500. Diya Sabish, 481 out of 500. Ashisha Biju, 481 out of 500. Joel Varghese Joshi, 481 out of 500. Mayuga Arun Kumar, 481 out of 500. Shisa Panampura, 481 out of 500. Mary Irene, 481 out of 500. Riona Rajiv, 481 out of 500. Ann Elsa Matthew, 481 out of 500. Devapriya M, 481 out of 500. Alan Bright, 481 out of 500. Yash Mohan, 481 out of 500. Ayush Jenny, 481 out of 500. Gautam K, 481 out of 500. P.S. Meghanath, 481 out of 500. Abhinav A. Warrior, 481 out of 500. Anupam S. Sunil, 481 out of 500. Karthik Praveen Nair, 481 out of 500. Shifa Fatima, 481 out of 500. Joseph Joshi, 481 out of 500. Saurav S, 481 out of 500. Adira Mary Jacob, 481 out of 500. Farhan Nasrin CJ, 481 out of 500. Uttara S, 481 out of 500. Kara Lixon, 481 out of 500. Arsh Nasir, 481 out of 500. Atmaja Nambudri, 481 out of 500. Aishwarya Abhishek, 481 out of 500. Diya R. Nath, 481 out of 500. Nivedita Ravishankar, 481 out of 500. Vaidehi Manoj Kumar, 481 out of 500. Joseph Jain, 481 out of 500. Naja Fatima, 481 out of 500. Shreyas Muguthan, 481 out of 500. Gauri Pradeep, 481 out of 500. Parvati Anish, 481 out of 500. Niranjana Prakash, 481 out of 500. Sona Teresa Augustine, 481 out of 500. Ardra Jayanthan, 481 out of 500. Pradiksha Rebecca, 481 out of 500. Aishwarya Bilu, 481 out of 500. Sarang Bennett, 481 out of 500. Aditi Harish, 481 out of 500. Aaron Matthew, 481 out of 500. Pranav Vijayan, 481 out of 500. Srihari H, 481 out of 500. Mohammad Farhan, 480 out of 500. Badra GS, 480 out of 500. Sneha Therese Thomas, 480 out of 500. Abhinav Anil Kumar, 480 out of 500. Shreya S, 480 out of 500. Amal Anthony Linson, 480 out of 500. Chinmay Narendran, 480 out of 500. Deepak Emmanuel, 480 out of 500. Subramanian R, 480 out of 500. Amel Abdur Rahman, 480 out of 500. Malavika GS, 480 out of 500. Shivani R. Raj, 480 out of 500. Krista Rose VS, 480 out of 500. Gopika, 480 out of 500. Kevin K. Soni, 480 out of 500. Sana Sunil, 480 out of 500. Rakshit Tevai, 480 out of 500. Abhishek Narayanan, 480 out of 500. Hari John, 480 out of 500. Meghanath V, 480 out of 500. Adityan S, 480 out of 500. Robin Joe Joseph, 480 out of 500. Adarsh R. Nath, 480 out of 500. Evan Paul Jacob, 480 out of 500. Nirmal Joseph John, 480 out of 500. Anova Airur, 480 out of 500. Fida Shesa Ibrahim, 480 out of 500. Parvati R. Nair, 480 out of 500. Cheryl C.B. Thomas, 480 out of 500. Ardra Ann Saji, 480 out of 500. Fida Fatima T.S., 480 out of 500. Karthik Nair R, 480 out of 500. U. Ajay Krishnan, 480 out of 500. Krishna Ranjit, 480 out of 500. Gayatri Suresh, 480 out of 500. Harinandan Sunil, 480 out of 500. Ashish Joseph, 480 out of 500. Christo Kurian, 480 out of 500. Akshaya V, 480 out of 500. Jwala NS, 480 out of 500. Krishna Sajesh, 480 out of 500. Amina Maheen, 480 out of 500. Etihas C, 480 out of 500. Neha Benny Joseph, 480 out of 500. Sriram KS, 480 out of 500. Amy and James, 480 out of 500. Sharon Varghese, 480 out of 500. Angeline Elsa Matthews, 480 out of 500. M. Sajini Mohan, 480 out of 500. Akshay MS, 480 out of 500. Sri Nandu M, 480 out of 500. Sean Joseph, 480 out of 500. Joshua Titus, 480 out of 500. R. Krishnaveni, 480 out of 500.
Brilliance Study Center, India's #1 coaching center for NEET and JEE.